My sister had always been the person I trusted the most in my life. We grew up together, sharing secrets, dreams, and even small daily struggles. She was my confidant, the one I could turn to when the world felt heavy. So when I discovered the betrayal, it hit me like a thunderclap, completely unexpected, utterly devastating. It started with my husband's phone. A message notification I wasn't supposed to see flashed across the screen. "I can't stop thinking about you." At first I couldn't believe it. My heart refused to accept the meaning. But then the details became undeniable. The timing, the sender, the familiar style of texting. My sister, my own sister. I sat frozen for a moment, staring at the screen. All those years of shared childhood, laughter, holidays, inside jokes, they felt tainted now. I had trusted her with everything. And in one cruel turn, she had undermined that trust. Quietly, meticulously. She wasn't just interfering in my marriage. She was dismantling it piece by piece. My husband walked in then, oblivious to what I had discovered. I saw the subtle, nervous gestures, the hesitation when meeting my eyes, the unspoken tension. It was all so painfully clear. For the first time in years, I felt the world shift beneath me, my stability, my safe space, collapsing in slow motion. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them immediately. That would have been easy, emotional, and ultimately pointless. Instead, I let myself feel the raw, heavy mix of anger, sadness, and shock. I walked to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the tears come. They weren't dramatic. They weren't loud. They were quiet, almost ritualistic. A small acknowledgement that my life as I knew it was over. Once the tears subsided, a strange clarity emerged. I realized that reacting impulsively would only give them power over me. If I wanted justice, if I wanted to reclaim a sense of control, I would need to act carefully. I started to think strategically. Small, calculated disruptions, a subtle return of imbalance in her perfect little world, something to make her feel, just slightly, what she had caused. I also felt conflicted. My sister was family. I loved her once. But love didn't excuse betrayal. Anger didn't consume me. Instead, it sharpened my focus. I decided to reclaim my life, to regain control of my emotions and my household, before taking even a single step toward her. Every plan I made was meticulous, measured, and contained. I knew the smallest misstep could backfire. By the end of that night, I had a plan forming in my mind. Not vengeance, not destruction, but subtle consequences. Lessons that would speak louder than anger or insults. My sister had underestimated me. Underestimated the strength I carried within years of shared experience and personal resilience. And now it was time for her to learn that trust, once broken, could leave scars deeper than either of us imagined. Over the next few weeks, I carefully executed my plan. Nothing overt, nothing aggressive, just small, deliberate disruptions in my sister's life. Minor inconveniences, the sort that make someone question their own stability. A coffee cup knocked over at the exact wrong moment. A forgotten appointment that caused minor embarrassment. Slight delays that disrupted her perfectly controlled routine. Each small act was a ripple, quiet but precise, designed to awaken a sense of consequence. It was strange how empowering this felt. I wasn't hurting anyone physically. I wasn't lashing out in rage. Yet seeing her flustered, slightly panicked, questioning herself, filled me with a calm sense of satisfaction. Every time she reacted to these subtle disruptions, it was proof that my plan worked. She could sense something was off, but she didn't know I was behind it. That uncertainty, her unease, was its own punishment. At the same time, my husband's own world began to unravel. The inconsistencies in my sister's behavior didn't escape him. He started noticing patterns, moments that didn't add up. Little lies became harder to maintain. I stayed silent, observing both of them, learning, analyzing. I never acted impulsively. Every move was measured, every reaction calculated. I remember one morning in particular. She had overslept, missed an important work call, and was frantically blaming everyone but herself. I watched from a distance as she spiraled, internally amused but externally calm. This was the chaos I had intended, not catastrophic, not irreparable, just enough to make her feel the disruption she had caused in my life. Throughout it all, I had to constantly remind myself, this was not revenge. This was justice, measured and deliberate. I didn't want to see her suffer in a cruel way, only to satisfy my anger. Every subtle setback was a reflection. Of the choices she had made, the betrayal she had committed. My hand didn't strike, it nudged. My influence was invisible, but undeniable. Even as the days passed, I noticed subtle changes. My sister grew more cautious, second-guessing every step, doubting her decisions. She became tense around my husband, unsure when the next problem would arise. That quiet tension was more effective than confrontation. It forced her to reflect, to consider the impact of her actions. And all the while, I preserved my own composure. I didn't rage, I didn't yell. I didn't show the heartbreak that had once consumed me. That was my true victory. I had regained control, not by force but by restraint. By allowing the small chaos to work its way through her life, I demonstrated that actions have consequences. By the end of the month, the tension had escalated. My sister and husband were both struggling under the weight of their own mistakes. My subtle maneuvers had worked. They were both seeing, firsthand, what betrayal truly cost, and me? I had remained untouchable, grounded, and focused on the bigger picture, protecting myself, reclaiming my sense of stability, and teaching lessons without lowering myself to anger. The quiet chaos had achieved more than I ever imagined. It wasn't just about punishing them, it was about clarity. About drawing boundaries, about showing that betrayal has consequences that can't simply be ignored or forgotten. And now, as I watched them scramble within their carefully constructed world, I knew the final act of this story was approaching. Eventually, the subtle chaos I had created reached its peak. My sister and my husband could no longer ignore the tension that had been quietly building in their lives. Minor mistakes and disruptions had grown into significant stress, forcing them to face the consequences of their betrayal. And all the while, I remained calm, collected, and fully aware of the power I had regained. My sister called one evening. Her voice was shaky, pleading, and full of regret. She admitted everything, her deceit, her manipulation, her betrayal, and asked if she could come back. For a moment, a part of me wanted to listen, to consider forgiving her, but I knew better. Forgiveness does not erase consequences, and some actions are too heavy to overlook. I had watched carefully as her perfect world crumbled under the weight of her own choices, and now it was time to let her face the final lesson herself. My husband, too, had begun to see the full impact of his actions. He realized how easily trust could be broken and how quickly comfort could turn into chaos. The quiet manipulations I had set in motion had done what words never could. They had shown both of them, unmistakably, the cost of betrayal. He didn't need my lectures, my anger, or my threats. He needed to see it firsthand. When my sister begged for reconciliation, I remained silent at first. I let her words hang in the air, heavy with guilt and desperation. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. The look in her eyes, fear, remorse, and confusion, was enough to confirm that the lesson had been learned. She didn't need me to tell her what she already knew deep down, that her actions had consequences far beyond what she anticipated. In the following weeks, life slowly began to return to a sense of normalcy for me. I focused on my own healing, rebuilding my personal life and reinforcing boundaries that would protect me and my family from future betrayal. I realized that true strength isn't about revenge or punishment, it's about patience, clarity, and the ability to stand firm while letting others face the outcomes of their decisions. Looking back, I understand now that the subtle chaos I introduced was never about hurting them. It was about restoring balance. It was about protecting myself, reclaiming my own peace, and teaching a lesson that could only be learned through experience. By observing quietly and allowing natural consequences to unfold, I regained control over my life without stooping to cruelty or bitterness. The final act wasn't dramatic. There were no screaming confrontations, no violent outbursts, no public humiliation. Just the quiet awareness that my sister and my husband had to live with what they had done, and I had survived, grown stronger, and learned the most valuable lesson of all. Betrayal is painful, but regaining yourself and enforcing your own boundaries is empowering. At the end of it all, I didn't need to punish them further. The universe had delivered the consequences they deserved. My victory was simple. I preserved my integrity, reclaimed my life, and walked away, knowing that I had done the right thing, not out of vengeance, but out of wisdom. And that finally was enough.